Now we learn how to relate to the audience. In order to ensure that we write in terms of our audience's wishes, preferences, hopes, and interests, we must make sure that we apply the you attitude when we write. We maintain a positive tone. We shore up our credibility. We treat the audience with politeness and respect and use bias free language. We also must ensure that the corporate image of the organization which we are representing is projected as a professional one by our messages or our communication artifacts. So, projecting the right professional image is also important. Now, let's look at what we mean by the you attitude. This means using terms that refer to you or your company must be replaced with terms that refer to your audience. This means expressions like I, me, mine, us, ours should be replaced with you and yours. If you look at this sentence, you will notice, let's look at the slide now. On the left hand side, on the top left hand side corner, we have this sentence. To help us process this order, we must ask for another copy of the requisition. This sentence unnecessarily uses too many us and we, and hence is not focused on the audience but focused on the communicator themselves. So this seems as though the person who had written in this sentence should be obliged by the customer and the customer should not be served. So look at the sentence on the right hand side. That does a much better job. Here the spotlight is focused on the audience, that is the customer, and not the store clerk or the communicator, so that your order can be filled promptly. Please send another copy of the requisition. When we apply the you attitude, we must show that we are aware of the position that the audience is in. Depending on the case, we must show our sincerity, empathy, and appreciation of the audience. You attitude simply doesn't mean using numerous you or yours in a sentence. It can also mean not applying the word you at times. Look at the next example. You should never use that type of paper in the copy machine. This sentence smacks of harshness, rebuke, and rudeness. So, any audience reading this sentence or hearing this will feel that he is being admonished severely for not being able to use the copy machine properly. So, here, not using the you, the pronoun you, is a better approach. That type of paper doesn't work very well in the copy machine. This sentence doesn't use the pronoun you. So the removal of the pronoun you has become more effective in this instance, and here you attitude actually means not using the term you. So when you think about you attitude, you have to really look at carefully, look at the situation very carefully and judiciously apply or not apply the term or the pronoun you. Next comes emphasizing the positive. In the world of business, negative messages, just like in the ordinary course of conversation in our social lives, are not really welcome. Although the businesses must convey many news that are negative. So, in order to establish a good relationship, you should stress on the part of the message which is positive, or reframe the negative sentence in a way so that it sounds positive. You should try to focus on what will be done or what exists, and not what will not be done and does not exist. Let's look at the example. Look at the first sentence on your left hand side. It is impossible to repair your vacuum cleaner today. So that is unduly abrupt and negative. Instead of saying it is impossible to repair your vacuum cleaner today, one could very well have said your vacuum cleaner will be ready by Tuesday, which amounts to the same thing, which actually means that the vacuum cleaner is not going to be ready today. So the example on the right hand side is much better. If you were a retailer of household appliances like a vacuum cleaner, and if the customer had purchased the vacuum cleaner with a warranty, and if you were working at the service center and the customer had returned with a vacuum cleaner which was not working, then you would have been obliged to repair it anyway. Therefore, expressing the inability in such a negative manner, it is impossible to repair your vacuum cleaner today, doesn't really work. Also, we must not use words which have negative connotations. Cheap merchandise has in the word cheap has many negative connotations. Cheap means inexpensive, poorly done, maybe expired, shoddy workmanship, many things. On the other hand, bargain prices has a lot of positive connotations. Bargain is not a pejorative term in the way cheap is. Bargain means gaining something, purchasing something of value, actually paying lower price for a product which would otherwise had been expensive. So also we should use euphemistic terms. So instead of toilet paper, we can use bathroom tissue. So euphemism means using mild terms and not really um, referring to something which is unpleasant by referring to it directly. Instead of calling someone elderly person, we can say senior citizen. Next comes establishing credibility. In order to make sure that you are actually trusted, you should make sure that your audience places their confidence in you. This means you should show them that you understand their concerns and their preferences. If they already know you, then maybe they already have a level of trust for you. But if not, if you are actually meeting completely new audience members, unknown audience members, then maybe you should explain your credentials, things that are common amongst you. If you are actually addressing a group of engineers and if you have an engineering degree, it is best to tell them that you are also an engineer. If you are addressing students and if you had been a student, then it is best also to tell your fellow students that you are a student just like them, belonging to Brack University. So this type of explanation of credentials establish credibility. One of the surefire ways of reducing credibility or diminishing your trustworthiness to exaggerate and brag. That is why it is best not to use superlative terms such as amazing, incredible, best, revolutionary, extraordinary, things like that. because terms like amazing, extraordinary surpasses the limit of believability easily. You may not be able to live up to those claims which you make by use of words such as amazing, extraordinary, incredible. Therefore, do not use such superlatives and use simpler terms. Lastly, when you actually address the audience either in writing or in speaking, you must also exude confidence. You should believe in yourself. Sometimes using terms that are specific to a profession uh, helps them um, helps you give the signal to your audience that you are confident, you are competent in what you do, and therefore they should trust you. Let's move to the next one. Politeness is very important. Being polite is another good way to earn your audience's respect. By being courteous to members of your audience, you show consideration of their needs and feelings. Express yourself with kindness and tact. Do not vent your emotions, such as your anger, your impatience, your unhappiness. Let's look at these examples. Left hand side, the sentence on the left hand side column, upper left hand side um, box on the left hand side column is to be avoided. You really foul things up with that last computer run. Instead of that, if you say, let's review what went wrong so that the next computer run goes smoothly, is much more polite and is likely to create goodwill. The first sentence, you really foul things up with that last computer run, actually vents out your anger, your impatience. You have been sitting on our order for 2 weeks. We need it now. That's also impolite. It vents out the exasperation that the writer is feeling owing to the delay in um, the processing of that order. So instead of that, if you just write, we are eager to receive our order, when can we expect delivery? It's much better. We need to make sure that in our writing there are no gender, ethnicity bias, or age or disability bias. Okay. Nowadays, it is unethical and an embarrassing blunder if you bring in any sort of racism or bias in your language. Let's tackle one by one. Gender bias. Any sexist language should be avoided. So instead of cabin stewardess or air hostess, you should use the word cabin crew. That's a much appropriate expression than the sexist expression of air hostess or stewardess. You should use the term MS instead of Mrs. or Miss to address a woman when you write to her, unless she has explicitly instructed you to use the term Mrs., that is MRS, or Miss, that is MISS. Race or ethnicity bias is another problem. So, any language suggesting that you are looking at a race or ethnic group in an stereotypical fashion should be avoided. You should not mention the name of the country or, ethnic ethnic slangs such as Negro or Chink should be avoided. Similarly, when you address someone who is aged, you should use senior citizen and not elderly people. There is great difficulty in not labeling people with disability with unflattering terms. Therefore, you should make sure that you don't use terms such as handicapped, crippled, or retarded. Instead of that, you should use, physical limitation, or altogether avoid these terms where possible and address the person by his name or profession. So that will be all about bias free language. Lastly, you should project the company's image. Remember, when the customer or the audience actually sees you, they they talk to you or they receive a message in writing from you, you are the face of the company. So what you need to do is, in order to establish your good relationship, you should not only project your own image but also the image of your company. When you communicate with outsiders on even the most routine matter, you serve as the spokesperson for your organization. The impression you make can enhance or damage the reputation of the entire company. Therefore, your personality must be subordinated, at least to some extent, to the interests of your company, which means you should really project the image of your company, which is a positive image. So that will be all from this chapter.